Top of the day, beautiful people. Happy, what's today? Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. It is October. I'm sorry, not October. November. Today is Bella's birthday, y'all. She is 6 years old today. Sis still asleep. I don't know if she can come down here this morning before we end because she was up. Not too late, but a little bit past her bedtime because like clockwork, she out every night by the same time. Like clockwork. But anyway, beautiful people, happy Wednesday. It is November the 2nd, 2022, day 253 of year 4, reading through the books of the law and prophets, another 4-year consecutive day count. It is day 1272. Today we're picking back up in Oahspe on page 19 or page XIX with the editor's notes, and I'm sure we're going to get past that, and then we're going to actually start and read the page that says Oahspe, and we might even have time to get into this next section called The Voice of Man, all right? And then after that, we're going to pick back up in the Field Guide to the Spirit World on page 23 with the first chapter entitled Spirit at Large. So let's get it going. Father, we thank you that you are the most compassionate. Yes, and amen. All right, Vinette. Greetings, Shebrew. All praise to the Creator. And Jehovah's children, shalom. Ray, hi, Angelique. Shalom, sis. Jamea. Shalom. Tabitha, Grand Rising. Set apart living, Grand Rising, Ima. And everybody else here hanging out in the background. Top of the day to you. Kendrick, shalom, shalom. All right, y'all, let's get going. Editor's notes. Page 19 or page XIX. This book utilizes the text of the 1891 edition. The discrepancies between this text and that of the 1882 edition, the only two original editions that exist, have been annotated in the footnotes. All footnotes refer to these differences. Footnotes are denoted by numbers. Consequently, this Elohist edition reflects the original manuscript in as complete and accurate a way as possible, considering the fact that the original manuscript is no longer available for comparison. It absolutely is. The John Lamp plates. Now listen, I was on the phone with the university yesterday, just getting some last minute questions answered, right? And so a new woman, I got a chance to talk to her. Her name was Elizabeth. I spoke to a guy named John. Then I spoke to the second guy's name. I forgot who I spoke to. But when I talked to Elizabeth and I was explaining to her just a little bit, and that how we were looking, I was just trying to figure out exactly how much they could get printed before we get there, right? And I was telling her we was thinking about taking 2, max 3 days being there, but if at all possible, if they could have all the different categories printed out and available to us, that would make the day that we have to be actually at the college just like one day, right? So as she was getting all of them from me, she was actually on the phone with me, and she sent me, I'm gonna share this other website with the whole, they have a whole exhibit for Oahspe. She called it an exhibit, right? Hold on, I'm gonna have to get it. I gotta go back to my, I'm gonna post it. Hold on. I was going to post it yesterday, but I hadn't finished going through it. An exhibit where on their webpage for the library webpage for New Mexico, if you scroll, I forget the step. I got to go back to my notes. But I'm going to do that after we get done. But there's a whole page exhibit for Oahspe, and everything regarding to Oahspe, the shalom, everything is included in that page with all the references. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a gold mine. She said, yeah. She said, we have so much stuff. She said, and for things like this, it'll tell you everywhere where all this information is located, the file, the box number, all the different, the item number and all that stuff. She said, so if you can get us the item number, that would make things a lot easier for us to track down. She said, but if you can get real specific, get the item number, then click on the item number, then go inside of it, and it gives you a little more detail. She said, pick specifically, if not the whole thing, get the box number and the file number. She said, if you give us that, we can go right to it. Otherwise, we'll pick up the item number and search through the title that you give us or whatever. I was like, okay. And so after being on the phone for a few minutes and going through all this and her walking me through the website and telling me what to click on, she said, okay, so how much of this are you getting printed out? I said, well, not all of it, just some specific things like what was happening at Shalom, the community, along with the John Lant, the actual original printing press plates, the proof sheets. She said, okay. She said, now some of this, she said, well, yeah, none of this is digitized yet. She said, so if you're coming in a few weeks, she said, it doesn't take us that long to get it printed out. She said, and if you want to, she said, really, we could put all this in PDF format for you and we can email it to you and we could even mail the printed copies to you if you want. I was like, and you won't be missing any pages? Because that's what, I'm not afraid of it. I'm not sure what process they take, she said, but normally the turnaround time for printing out jobs like this, she said it doesn't ever really take that long. She said a week. She said the longest I've seen it so far is about a week. You know, she said it's a really good turnaround time. She said we charge one flat rate for shipping. She said, and it's only $3. And I'm like, $3 for all this? Okay. Well, I was like, okay, just let me finish going through this, getting all this. Let me talk to my husband and see which would be best. You know, so I'm thinking, I don't know. I don't know, y'all. I'm going to see. Because I'm going to call her back today. I told her, I said, give me one more day. Let me finish going through this. Because she was so nice that she stayed on the phone with me to a little bit even after they closed. You know, so we was talking for a little while she was pointing things out and telling me what to do in the order form if I chose to do it that way. How to fill all that out. So I'm just like, okay, let me go ahead and do this. I don't want to hold you up any longer. So let me finish going through this and look over this little order form and all that good stuff. And I'll give you guys a call back tomorrow. So which is today. All right. So we looking through it. Let me finish pulling all the things together and let's see exactly how thick it's going to be, all this. And if they can do it. And I don't know. I got a good feeling about it. So I don't know. Then my husband still haven't finished talking about it. Once we finish getting all this, whether we still just going to go ahead and just print it out there and we'll bring it. But still send us the PDFs ahead of time. I don't know. We're trying to figure that part out. But anyway, Hannah, Grand Rising. Yahweh, Grand Rising, Grand Rising. Prince, shalom, brother. All right, let's go back to this. Okay, let me just read the whole first little paragraph. It's only a couple sentences because that's why I stopped. Okay. We're in the editor's notes on page 19 of Oahspe, or page XIX. This book utilizes the text of the 1891 edition. The discrepancies between this text and that of the 1882 edition, the only two original editions that exist, have been annotated in the footnotes. All footnotes refer to these differences. Footnotes are denoted by numbers. Consequently, this Elohist edition reflects the original manuscript as complete and accurate a way as possible, considering the fact that the original manuscript is no longer available for comparison. And that's why I paused and told you it absolutely is. It's the John Lant proof sheets being held at New Mexico State University in the archives section. The differences between the text detailed in the footnotes include additions, deletions, and alterations. Text from the 1882 edition that was deleted in the 1891 edition is shown in bold italics. Text that was added in the 1891 edition appears in square brackets. When the text was altered between the 1882 and the 1891 editions, the earlier text from the 1882 editions appeared in the footnote in bold. Standard type in the footnotes refers to the text that remains constant between the two editions, but has been included for clarity's sake. Most commentaries on the text, including the editor's selection of footnotes that appeared in either edition, have been moved to the endnotes at the end of each book. The endnotes include only those commentaries for which an obvious substantiating source could be cited or deemed by the editors as helpful to understand the text. Endnotes are denoted by letters of the alphabet. Endnotes without attribution, the bulk of the glossary, and the 3 plates that accompany it were written by the Elohist editors. Obvious typographical errors, grammatical errors, and inconsequential alterations in either edition have been corrected without being footnoted. This included several instances in which an entire line of text was deleted from the 1882 edition in a manner consistent with the proofreading error. Where these instances consisted of a complete line of text deleted in apparent error, the line was restored without a footnote. There are also several instances in which differences in language expression between the two editions did not alter the meaning of the text, but would have generated numerous redundant footnotes. For the sake of simplicity, the first occurrence of each change has been footnoted. All subsequent occurrences were not footnoted. These alterations were as follows. And it gives 12 of them. The 1882 edition of Oahspe used X millions and Y hundred thousands in its text, while in the 1891 edition used X million Y 100,000. Millions. It just took the S off of millions. Okay. Tabitha. Oh, I already said hey to Tabitha. Anita. Shalom. Darius CM. Shalom. Shalom. Number 2, in many places, the 1882 edition used millions of, and millions of in its text, while the 1891 edition used million in all 3 cases. Number 3, the 1882 edition used billion and million, while the 1891 edition used thousand and million. For example, the 1882 edition's text had 3,700,000,000, and the 1891 edition's text had 3,700 million, which was a different way to express the same number. Another difference was where the 1882 edition's text had 4,200, while the 1891 edition's text used 4,200, deleting and. Consequently, as long as the numbers expressed were the same in both editions, regardless of the language used, it has not been footnoted. In many instances, the 1882 edition used druge, while the 1891 editions used druhas for the plural noun. Number 5, the 1882 edition sometimes used ship star, while the 1891 edition used starship. Number 6, the 1891 edition occasionally added hyphens to make compound words that do not change the meaning of the text, e.g., after generations, after ages. The 1882 edition used after generations and after ages, removing the hyphen. All right. Number 7, the 1882 edition used whoever or whoso or whosoever, while the 1891 edition used whomsoever. Number 8, according to the book of Safa, both Ga and Gia seem to be synonymous. Since they were used interchangeably between the 2 editions, differences in choice of wording have not been noted in the footnotes. Ga is used throughout whenever a difference was noted between the 2 editions. Let me say something about this, too, about Safa. So we know that some things have been added whatsoever. So I said we will not be reading through it this time, but I think we will. And the changes and stuff that I will note, or things that have been added that I can find and compile, we'll point those out while reading through it instead of just skipping it all together, right? So I think it'll be a good reference. Okay. Number 9, students of Oahspe may notice that this edition deletes an extensive commentary included in all the earlier editions that was extracted from Alexander von Humboldt's work, Cosmos. These extensive quotations were inserted by Dr. Newbrough to substantiate parts of Oahspe, particularly aspects of the book of cosmogony and prophecy. Von Humboldt's Cosmos gained a degree of popularity in the mid-1800s as it endeavored to demonstrate the interconnectedness of nature, emphasizing precise empirical measurements and instrumentation. While Humboldtian science helped advance the scientific method at that time in its own way, this material is now only of historical interest and had no direct connection with Oahspe as such. I'm sorry, I just thought about something yesterday, and reading Scientific Method reminded me of it. Okay. The extensive quotations from Humboldt's Cosmos seem to imply such a connection, which was certainly not the case. Therefore, these references have been deleted, keeping the emphasis on the text of Oahspe instead. The 1882 edition also included extensive quotations from Anacalypsis by Geoffrey Higgins, which was first published in 1833. This ponderous work sought to demonstrate the existence of a root religion from which all later religions evolved. Since this work also had no direct connection with Oahspe, these references, which have been a part of New World's commentary on this text, has been deleted as well. Number 10, Oahspe often uses abbreviations for the name of various books. For example, Book of Ben denotes God's Book of Ben. Book of Cosmogony signifies Book of Cosmogony and Prophecy. These abbreviations have been maintained in this edition of Oahspe. Number 11, any added words or phrases that appear in the text in square brackets should be understood as an 1882 editorial comment and not part of the original manuscript. The only exception is in the Book of Safa, where language references are in parentheses and non-language references are in brackets. Number 12, index notations. When a cited reference in the index has the same verse number appearing both in the upper and lower book, an italics superscript L is used for a lower book verse and U is used for an upper book verse for clarity as to which verse the reference citing applies. Finally, as all of us make allowances for the errors and flaws found within all books, including Oahspe, the editors of this Alois edition trust that the reader will also forgive us for any additional errors or flaws we may have introduced into either the text or supplementary material in spite of our best efforts to the contrary. Shayla, hey girl, hey. All right, at the bottom of page 20 or page XX, suggestions for new students of Oahspe. The books of the interlude, namely God's Book of Ben, Book of Cosmogony and Prophecy, Book of Safa, and Bond's Book of Praise, deal with matters not directly related to the historical narrative of Oahspe. It has been suggested, therefore, that the books of the interlude may be skipped on the first reading of Oahspe without any loss of understanding. The books of the interlude may then be assimilated at one's leisure at the end of the first reading, which we just read straight through, right? The potentially confusing discussions of different cycles of times, ages, eras, gadols, seasons, sums, etc., particularly in the glossary, may be deferred by new students of Oahspe until a later time as well. What I found really helpful yesterday, because I pulled it out, Selah's book that he did, that gives a little more, it's like he kind of pulled those things out to expound on them a little bit more. And I saw that that was helpful a little bit in understanding a little bit more like the gadols and the ages, the seasons, sums, and all that stuff. So I would recommend y'all get that if you don't have it, if you're looking to try to understand that a little bit better, right? So that's Selah's book, Timetables of Prophecy. All right. The potentially confusing discussions of different cycles of time, ages, eras, gadols, seasons, sums, etc., particularly in the glossary, may be deferred by new students of Oahspe until a later time. Once the book is comprehended in its entirety, it will become much easier to appreciate these concepts and their value, which when I pulled it out yesterday, now that I've gotten through it and even through the Book of Cosmogony and Prophecy and all that stuff and go back and open his book up, things are making a little bit more sense. Everything hasn't fully clicked where I can begin to explain it. Let's do a lesson on Cosmogony and Prophecy today. I'm like, no, I need to be sitting down listening. Right? It ain't clicked in that much yet to where we can break it down and stuff like some other people be doing. I do aspire to be there one day. Listen. Once the book is comprehended in its entirety, it will become much easier to appreciate these concepts and their value. Also, it would be unfortunate if, by becoming mired in such academic details, one failed to grasp the greater message of the book. Finally, I probably should highlight that, right? Hold up. Let's highlight the whole section for the suggestions for new students of Oahspe. I'm going to read this sentence. These last two sentences again. Once the book is comprehended in its entirety, it will become much easier to appreciate these concepts and their value. Also, it would be unfortunate if, by becoming mired in such academic details, one failed to grasp the greater message of the book. Hey, son, can you take that out for me? Thank you. Finally, it may also be helpful to clarify in advance that the terms God and Lord are not used in this context as a reference to the one and only ever-present Creator or to any worshipful deity. Let me read that again. Finally, it may also be helpful to clarify in advance that the terms God and Lord are not used in this text as references to the only one and only ever-present Creator or to any worshipful deity. Hey, girl, hey, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Bella. Happy birthday to you. Yes, I'll let you end it before you even ask. Okay. All right, Tootie. All right, let me read that one more time. Finally, it may be helpful to clarify in advance that the terms God and Lord are not used in this text as references to the one and only ever-present Creator or to any worshipful deity. Angelique said, happy birthday, Bella. Thank you. She said, thank you. Just as a country may have a president and state governors who serve a term of office, high-raised angels who once were mortals have similar functions in heaven. An angel who serves a term of office as president over the earth is called God. And angels who serve a term of office over divisions of the earth are called lords. Oahspe is not in any way polytheistic. It teaches that only the ever-present Great Spirit is worshipful, and only the Great Spirit is the source of creation and life. Right? So if people skip over this, even the very beginning, they're gonna miss the whole gist of everything when they start reading God and Lord like they do in the Bible. Right? It's letting you know right up front who is who. Right. Shibu said, happy birthday. She said, beautiful birthday, Princess Bella.
Just so
This
remember.
today? This is today. What time y'all gonna be done?
No idea.
Did they call to confirm that? Get out, Katie. I'll call them. Yeah. I'll call them. Just leave that right there. I'll call them when I get done. Well, not when I get done, when they open. Get out, for.
So this is the thing I forgot to tell you. For my two molars back here, there's one or two things. If I want these fillings, I have to get these removed. But look.
No, you don't need to get nothing removed to get a filling.
Let me finish. Fillings, I need to get these filled and have these removed. But now look.
Which is why they put it in this order, right? This first, then that.
No, this is the reason why. If these stay, the molars actually, because of the pressure, it's going to disintegrate these, so there's literally no point.
I'll call them and talk to them. Okay.
Like it's literally crushing that tooth. It cracked it and the tooth got infected.
Okay.
That's the reason why.
You don't have an infection in your mouth, boy.
Isn't a cavity infection in the tooth?
Okay, it's a cavity, but it's if you want to call it that, okay, whatever.
As long as
tomato.
As long as there's not no.
I'll give them a call.
Infection.
Okay. Do I need to reschedule this? Because if you're not gonna be able to make it there by noon today, I'm gonna need to reschedule this. I'll call y'all. I'll call y'all in a few. See where y'all at. Okay. Key, shalom. Okay. Oh yeah. we probably only have time to read this first portion of Oahspe right here. Page 21, Oahspe. After the creation of man, the Creator, Jehovah, said unto him, that thou shalt know that thou art the work of my hand. I have given thee capacity for knowledge, power, and dominion. This was the first era. But man was helpless, and after helpless is reference number 1, and at the bottom, but man was helpless, crawling on his belly, and he understood not the voice of the Almighty, neither stood he upright. So let's go back up. That thou shalt know that thou art the work of my hand. I have given thee capacity for knowledge, power, and dominion. This was the first era. But man was helpless. He understood not the voice of the Almighty, neither stood he upright. And Jehovah called his angels, who were older than the earth, and he said unto them, Go ye, raise man upright, and teach him to understand. And the angels of heaven descended to the earth, and raised man upright. And man wandered about on the earth. This was the second era. Jehovah said to the angels that were with man, Behold, man hath multiplied on the earth. Bring ye them together, teach them to dwell in cities and nations. And the angels of Jehovah taught the peoples of the earth to dwell together in cities and nations. This was the third era. And in that same time, the beast, and after beast is self, S-E-L-F, self. At that same time, the beast, self, rose up before man and spake to him, saying, Possess thou whatsoever thou wilt, for all things are thine, and are good for thee. And man obeyed the beast, and war came into the world. This was the fourth era. And man was sick at heart, and he called out to the beast, saying, Thou saidst, Possess thyself of all things, for they are good for thee. Now behold, war and death have encompassed me about on all sides. I pray thee, therefore, teach me peace. But the beast said, Think not I am come to send peace on the earth. I come not to send peace, but a sword. I come to set man at variance against his father, and a daughter against her mother. Whatsoever thou findest to eat, be it fish or flesh, eat thou thereof, taking no thought of tomorrow. And man ate fish and flesh, becoming carnivorous, and darkness came upon him. Neither yet heard he the voice of Jehovah, nor believed in him. This was the fifth era. And after nor believed in him, and after him is reference number 2. And 2 at the bottom says, And darkness came upon him, and he no more heard the voice of Jehovah, or believed in him. And this reminded me of what I was reading this morning from the Scenes Gospel of Peace, when it was getting into like Revelation. I'm thinking I'm moving that book up. After we get done with the Field Spirit Guide, we're going to bring in the Scenes Gospel of Peace. So we're going to be reading that for the last 30 minutes of why we're here when we get done with this first book by Susan B. Martinez. And then we'll adjust the lineup again for after we read this Scenes Gospel of Peace. Like, it was completely blowing my mind. Verse 11. Go ahead. Okay. Verse 11. And the beast divided itself into 4 great heads, and possessed the earth about, and man fell down and worshipped them. And the names of the heads of the beast were Brahmin, Buddhist, Christian, and Mohammedan. And they divided the earth, and apportioned it between themselves, choosing soldiers and standing armies for the maintenance of their earthly aggrandizement. And the Brahmins had 7 million soldiers, the Buddhists 20 million, the Christians 7 million, and the Mohammedans 2 million, whose trade was killing man. And man, in service of the beast, gave 1/6 of his life and his labor to war and standing armies, and 1/3 of his life he gave to dissipation and drunkenness. This was the 6th era. Verse 14. Jehovah called to man to desist from evil, but man heard him not. And after Jehovah called, after called is reference number 3, and 3 says called out to. Jehovah called to man to desist from evil, but man heard him not. For the cunning of the beast had changed man's flesh, so that his soul was hid as if in a cloud, and he loved sin. Jehovah called unto his angels in heaven, saying, Go ye down to the earth once more to man, whom I created to inhabit the earth and enjoy it. And say ye unto man, Thus saith Jehovah, Behold, the seventh era is at hand. Thy creator commandeth thy change from a carnivorous man to contention. Thy creator commanded thy change from a carnivorous man of contention to an herbivorous man of peace. The foreheads of the beast shall be put away, the war shall be no more on the earth. Thy armies shall be disbanded, and from this time forth, whosoever desireth not to war, thou shalt not impress, for it is the commandment of thy Creator. Neither shalt thou have any God, nor Lord, nor Savior, but only thy Creator, Jehovah. Him only shalt thou worship henceforth forever. I am sufficient unto mine own creations. And as to many as separate themselves from the dominion of the beast, making these covenants unto me, have I given the foundation of my kingdom on earth. And all such shall be my chosen. By their covenants and by their works shall they be known henceforth on the earth as mine, and shall be called Faithis. And after Faithis is reference letter A. And A at the bottom, yes, because it's the end. Yeah, A is at the bottom, because we literally about that at the end of this particular chapter. And it says, this should not be misconstrued as the designation of a newly established sect. See entry for Faithis in the glossary. All right, let's go to Faithis in the glossary. Oh, that's the index. Glossary. It's on page 775. Faithis, one who has faith in Jehovah, the ever-present Great Spirit, being over all and within all, to a wise and definite purpose. One who has faith only in Jehovah and not in a God in the shape of a man. One who endeavors to grow in unison with Jehovah by doing good unto others and in striving to put away self-interest. A non-resistant refers to a general way of thinking and living rather than to any one specific organized religion or sect. The opposite of an Uzian. Faithists can come from a variety of religious backgrounds and are found within diverse cultures throughout history. A student of Oahspe is just a student of Oahspe. The proof is in the person. That's good. The proof is in the person, not in the book one happens to possess. Right? Just like you walk around with a Bible, don't make you a Christian unless you live its higher like principles. Right? Because just because you carry it around don't mean a hill of beans. Right? A student of Oahspe is just a student of Oahspe. The proof is in the person, not in the book one happens to possess. See Book of Oahspe, chapter 9, verse 22. Let's just run to it real quick. Book of Oahspe. Let's find it. Start on page 42, Book of Oahspe. What chapter? 9? IX chapter 9, verse 22. Verse 22. Which is on page 50. It says, such as could comprehend me, having faith that my presence in person shall ultimately triumph for the highest and best, I command it to be called Faithis. Since the beginning, I have kept a thread of this line inhabiting the earth and her heavens. That's good. So for all generations of man, there has been a line or a group of people found all over the world, not set aside like just over here, but they are sprinkled all throughout the world that keeps to the worship of the one true creator. and him only, right? And they're the ones called faithists. And they actually live it, not just talk about it, right? That's what it's referring to. So that's it. Yep, let's go back to the beginning. Page 2, verse 20. And all such shall be my chosen. By their covenants and by their works shall they be known henceforth on the earth as mine, and shall be called faithists. Even Bible tells you that, right? We're going to be known by our fruits, right? Well, taste the fruit of my tree. But as to many as will not make these covenants, have I given the numbers of the beast, and they shall be called Uzians, signifying destroyers. And these shall be henceforth the two kinds of people on earth, faithists and Uzians, right? Uzians, those who live on the dark side of life, against the Creator, right? Going away from him instead of to him, right? Uzians. And the angels of heaven descended to the earth to man, and appeared before him face to face, hundreds of thousands of them, speaking as man speaketh, and writing as man writeth, teaching these things of Jehovah and his works. And in the 33rd year thereof, the ambassadors of the angel host of heaven prepared and revealed unto man, in the name of Jehovah, his heavenly kingdoms, and have thus herein made, Elijah. He's down here. And in the 33rd year thereof, the ambassadors of the angel host of heaven prepared and revealed unto man in the name of Jehovah his heavenly kingdoms, and have thus herein made known the plan of his delightful creations for the resurrection of the peoples of the earth. Not infallible is this book, Oahspe, but to teach mortals how to attain to hear the Creator's voice. Love you too, son. And to see his heavens in full consciousness while still living on the earth, and to know of a truth the place and condition awaiting them after death. And after not infallible is this book, all right, son, love you, is reference number 4. And 4 is right at the bottom, right under verse number 26, not immaculate in. All right. So I'm going to reread verse 24 again. Not infallible is this book, Oahspe.
You think I'll be able to making the time because it's 6 right now. 15 minutes to get to the warehouse.
Maybe.
2 hours.
Maybe. I'll call you. I'll see where y'all at about 10 o'clock. Just go. I'll call you. I'll see where y'all at. And if y'all not anywhere near being done, I can probably steal you for about an hour and a half and take you to your appointment and get you back. Go. Not infallible is this book, Oahspe, but to teach mortals how to attain to hear the Creator's voice, and to see his heavens in full consciousness while still living on the earth, and to know of a truth the place and condition awaiting them after death. Neither are nor were the revelations within this Oahspe wholly new to mortals. The same things have been revealed at the same time unto many who live at remote distances from one another, but who were not in correspondence till afterward. Because this light is thus comprehensive, embracing corporal and spiritual things, it is called the beginning of the Cosmon era. And because it relates to earth, sky, and spirit, it is called Oahspe. All right, so this is where we pause today, and tomorrow we'll begin with the voice of man on page 3. Okay, so let's move this. Yeah. All right, let's get the field guide. We got what? We have 40 minutes. We got 20 minutes. Okay, go to page 23, chapter 1 in Field Guide to the Spirit World. The title is entitled, Spirit at Large. And it starts with this, The Unbelievable by Edwin Markham. So it's all in italics, right? So it's either like a poem or this little blurb from what he wrote called The Unbelievable. Impossible, you say, that man survives the grave, that there are other lives. More strange, O friend, that we should ever rise out of the dark to walk below the skies. Once having risen into life and light, we need not wonder at our deathless flight. We believe the all-imaging power that breathed the cosmos forth as a golden flower had potence in its breath to plan us new surprises beyond death, new spaces and new goals for the adventure of ascending souls. Be brave, O heart, be brave. It is not strange that man survives the grave. 'Twould be a stranger thing were he destroyed than that he ever vaulted from the void. And that's from his little poem, The Unbelievable. And it's about man surviving death, right? Like, we never die. We truly are eternal. If we looked at life in that fashion, we'd grow a lot faster spiritually, realizing that this is just a small portion of our lives as spirit, right? Because we're operating as spirit, but within a small little confine, right? We'll talk about that later. Okay. As you, dear reader, may well know, the great age of spiritualism hit the ground running in America in the year 1848. And it has a little asterisk after 1848. And at the bottom, it says that year, 1848, is memorialized in the Cosmic Bible, Oahspe, as year one of the new bright era called Cosmos. Interesting. That was just literally at the end of the chapter we just got done reading. In very little time, distinguished personalities, including Abraham Lincoln, were taking active interest in mediumistic circles, sweeping the country like brush fire. The movement, nonetheless, drew as many detractors as proponents. John Dodge, for one, thought he could explain the apparent manifestation of spirits in a purely materialist way. His book, The Philosophy of Electrical Psychology, met with great success, especially in the scientific community. In 1851, Daniel Webster, Sam Houston, and Henry Clay personally invited Mr. Dodge to the Capitol to lecture on his ideas. Spirits, Dodd explained in his talk, were not a reality. What we mistook for spirits were merely the body's electrical emanations, produced for the most part by the operations of the brain. You can tell he was a real intellectual getting there trying to explain this away. A spirit trying to explain the spirit away. Listen, he was so asleep at that time. Listen. A few years later, though, Dodds was disturbed by an unnerving experience, an apparition. 4 spirits appeared before him, 4 relatives who were living in Norfolk, Virginia, right here where I'm at. Well, I'm in Suffolk now, but here in my area, Hampton Roads, the Tidewater area. 4 spirits appeared before him, 4 relatives who were living in Norfolk, Virginia. They told him that they had just passed into the spirit world, dead of yellow fever. When Dodds later confirmed the fact, his unbelief was shaken. Over the next 6 months, John Dodds struggled with his unsettling experience, trying to convince himself that the vision had been some sort of psychological quirk. By early 1856, he gave up the fight and joined the ranks of the spiritualists, publicly embracing the immortality of the soul. The question is sometimes asked, why were there so many manifestations and full-form apparitions in the mid-19th century compared to today? One explanation, drawing on the Oahspe Bible, lies in the matter of cyclic dawns and danhas. These are times of light ushering in a new era, which then lasts for some 3,000 years, meaning we are still in that, right? Where that information is being poured out upon all flesh, right? And those that get it and tap in are those who are beginning to line their light and their life up to the information that's flowing out. If you get on that channel, you will receive all that information, right? Listen, I went up too far. One explanation, drawing on the Oahspe Bible, lies in the matter of cyclic dawns or Dan-Ha's. These are times of light, ushering in a new era, which then lasts for some 3,000 years. Cosmon is the name of the present era, which began in 1848. The light of heaven is revealed at the start of each new dawn. Quote, Jehovah gave this sign to man on earth, which is to say, in the beginning of the light of Dan-Ha, the spirits of the newly dead shall have power to take upon themselves the semblance of corporal, physical bodies and appear and talk face to face with mortals. Every 3,000 years, Jehovah gave this sign on earth. End quote. And it's found in Oahspe, Book of Jehovah, chapter 7, verse 4. We're on page 25, chapter 1. Like Dodds, his contemporary, Dr. John Ballou Newbrough, 1828 to 1891, would go the way from skeptic to believer, but again, not without a fight. For many years, approximately from 1848 to 1874, Newbrough, though medium, mystic, and clairvoyant himself, would not commit to any of the going theories. I think he truly turned a corner in 1874, the year in which he published a small booklet entitled Spiritualis. The tract was in a Q&A format, or question and answer format, in which he posed questions to his spirit teachers. At one point, question 19, he inquired about electricity, a la Dodds, and magnetism. The favorite theory then currently held was that paranormal phenomena devolved on a living magnetism or electricity belonging to the body of the medium. The magnetizer's art was thought to depend on withdrawing that electricity from the system. However, the jolting answer to Newbrough's question 19 was that dead magnetism cannot impart intelligence, and electricity is inanimate, it grows not. Moreover, Newbrough was told that the power that springs from the living body is spirit. Only spirit could receive and impart knowledge. Newbrough, 7 years later, became the amanuensis of the Oahspe Bible. My bibliography of Newbrough is called The Hidden Prophet, and they have that on Kindle if you want to download it. You can also buy the printed copy of it as well. I think it follows that energy, like electricity, is an Okay, I read it a little bit wrong. I think it follows that energy, like electricity, is an inadequate solution to such manifestations as show intelligence, as discussed in the introduction. Yet 150 years have done nothing to settle the debate. Even today's parapsychologists, who should know better, tell us that flying objects in a poltergeist situation, some of them huge and following elaborate patterns, are being thrown about by psychic energy emanating from the unconscious. Most incredible. Ad Hunt and McMahon, 1888, page 116. Is the continued insistence of these skeptics that such amazing physical phenomena are caused by the subconscious release of a mental force innate within themselves. Hauntings, it is still stubbornly argued, are not caused by any intelligence, but by energy that psychic sensitives merely interpret as personalities. No, ghosts are not ghosts, but some kind of psychic energy, emphasis added, that has been imprinted on the atmosphere and can be picked up by certain people. Underwood, 1986, page 219. Just how this splendid magic is wrought is never explained, nor are we given the slightest clue how an impersonal bundle of violent psychic energy, emphasis added, could be the fallout from an emotional explosion which may have occurred centuries ago. Spraggett, 1967, page 164. So it's saying that is completely wrong, right? Because you're trying to tell me that power is illuminating from this cup itself, and all of this is happening because of some innate force within this. It has no life in it, right? And they trying to explain things away like things in and of themselves is creating these apparitions and all these energy flows and paranormal activities and stuff. They said, really? And explain to us how this is exactly how this happens, right? That's when he said, just how this splendid magic is wrought is never explained, nor are we given the slightest clue how an impersonal bundle of violent psychic energy is italicized and it has emphasis added for the italicization of energy. Nor are we given the slightest clue how an impersonal bundle of violent psychic energy, emphasis added, could be the fallout from an emotional explosion which may have occurred centuries ago. Sprague, 1967, page 164. If this were any other field of study, these theories would be drummed out for wild speculation and gross incompetence, right? Ghostly entities, in fact, exhibit not only intelligence, but also cunning, as well as, almost knocked it over, as well as, hold on. Let me start over. Ghostly entities, in fact, exhibit not only intelligence, but also cunning, as well as precise timing, showing up as they so often do on the anniversary of some pivotal event. How could we possibly call this an impersonal energy? I'll tell you how. Twaddle, that is nonetheless the materialist's last redoubt against the actual reality of ghosts. True, it is a separate reality. Ghosts and earthbound entities, EB for short, are inhabitants of neither heaven nor earth, neither here nor there. They wander in darkness. Quote, a great multitude of angels of darkness are gathered together upon the face of the earth, and many of them will not hence into the higher heavens. Billions of spirits of the dead do not know the plan of the resurrection to the higher heavens, but wander about on the earth, not even knowing the organizations of the kingdoms of the lowest heavens. Many of these angels believe the heavens to be like an unorganized wilderness, void of government, instruction, and discipline, and by virtue of their presence with mortals, though invisible to them, do inspire mortals with the same darkness. End quote. Oahspe, God's Book of Escrow, chapter 1, verses 4 through 7. You will find that their bellywhack described as limbo, the outer darkness, or Hades. As England's Dr. Arthur Gurdon, 1982, page 209, once put it, the discarnate entities which cause psychiatric disease circulate in what we call Hades, a no man's land between this world and the next. These are psyches so contaminated by materialism that they remain in close proximity to it. Gurdon's countrywoman, Dion Fortune, 1981, page 63, has seen enough of the dark side to know that the entity causing the trouble may be a soul that is itself in distress and is too ignorant of post-mortem conditions to know the harm it is doing by clinging so desperately to the living. Her wording, clinging so desperately, is echoed in the words of Eugene Morey, 1988, page 48, one of America's most adept exorcists. I often think of an invading spirit entity as a drowning person desperately clinging to another for help. When living on the earth, he was never given directions or an indication what he would find after dying. He may think that possessing a living person is his sole option. He knows of no other place to go. End quote. Quote, as a drowning man clingeth to a log, so cling the Druhas, Hades spirits, to mortals. End quote. That's found in Oahspe, Book of Lika, chapter 22, verse 11. A grasping parasitic entity that latched onto a young man was described in the same terms. Quite by chance, an experienced medium, Frank Decker, happened to meet that young man and later avowed that he had perceived a spirit with him that was hanging around him so closely that he is almost overshadowing the young man's personality. He, the entity, is very unenlightened. He does not know he is dead. He seems to be clinging, emphasis added, to the young man, not really knowing what is going on. End quote. S. Smith, 1970b, page 152. Cases vary. One entity spotted by Dr. Adam Crabtree, 1985, page 178, was afraid of starvation without someone to feed upon. Feed? Oahspe alludes to this. Quote, millions of them lived with mortals as familiars, depending for their own existence upon the spiritual part of the food mortals drank and ate. End quote. Oahspe, Book of Fragapati, chapter 37, verse 3. Or as Dr. Edith Fiore, 1987, page 77, has observed, the victim of sudden death may just latch on to the nearest person to stay alive, or simply because they feel lonely, confused, or scared. How long can such an attachment endure? Maybe a few years, or it may be hundreds of years, according to Oahspe, Book of Judgment, chapter 23, verse 23, and also to British spirit worker Wilma Davidson, 2006, page 104, who says that the length of time a spirit can wander the between worlds ranges from a few days to several hundred years. The English cases are some of the richest. Near Exeter, in 2007, a spirit named Jacob was wreaking havoc in one particular household. Through the medium, he divulged that he had been hanged nearby for horse stealing in 1837. In spooky old England, too, near the Channel, a very old house was found to be haunted by a stubborn spirit who ultimately revealed himself as John Aird. I was murdered in this house 465 years, 9 months and 3 days ago, and buried in a garden. Herwood, 1971, page 12. Aird further communicated that he had hidden a quantity of gold in the cellar and wanted it to be found and turned over to his descendants. It is not that unusual for money matters to hold a spirit back, as in the case of one John Clement X. And after John Clement X, it has an asterisk after the X. And at the bottom it says, appending an X onto someone's name is the standard way that spiritualists refer to a deceased person who returns, usually in a communication announcing his or her identity as an ex-mortal. Okay, so go back up. I'm going to read the sentence over. It is not that unusual for money matters to hold a spirit back, as in the case of one John Clement X, who recalled with great remorse a crime he had committed during his life, asking that the money that remained be returned to its owner. Fodor, 1966, page 387. Or take a more recent American case. A man dies. His wife cannot find his life insurance policy. The husband comes in a dream, revealing that the papers are in a strong box in the attic, and that is just where she finds them. Sometimes it is only the deceased who can reveal a hiding place. After the death of Dante, it was realized that After the death of Dante, it was realized that the 13th canto of his Paradiso was missing. Soon the dead poet appeared to his son Pietro Alighieri and told him to remove a curtain panel near the window of the room in which the poem was written, and there the missing canto was found, mildewed but legible. Alcott, 1972, pages 99 to 100. Quote, patterns of haunting are almost identical in all countries and cultures, end quote. Hans Nageli Osjord, Possession and Exorcism. Concerning ghost return, there are countless antidotes pointing to some grievance of the departed that keeps him or her that keeps him or her lingering on the earth plane. Often we hear some excarnate house owner disgruntled with the new owners and manifesting as a disruptive ghost or even a poltergeist. When I read this, I thought about the story Selah gave when he said it's an active spirit in the building. Oh, that story tickled me and scared me at the same time. Listen. Concerning ghost return, there are countless antidotes pointing to some grievance of the departed that keeps him or her lingering on the earth plane. Often we hear of some excarnate house owner disgruntled with the new owners and manifesting as a disruptive ghost or even a poltergeist. Others are obsessed with a place, such as the entity who possessed a very young girl because her family built their home on her erstwhile 80 years ago property. Vengeful, the entity had tried to attack the parents, but their aura was too strong. So the child became the victim, and she was made into a very shy, crippling, fearful child, which is why we shouldn't be lying to our children, giving them crazy stories. I know sometimes you got to think of a story to convey a principle, but things like this, we got to tell the children truth, teach them about the Creator, and make sure they're as strong spiritually as they possibly can be at the current ages they are, and it should grow over the years, right? We don't never want our children to become a target of any of these things. Hold on. Vengeful, the entity had tried to attack the parents, but their aura was too strong, so the child became the victim, and she was made into a very shy, crippling, fearful child. As a matter of fact, the possessor, as discovered in hypnosis, had been a hanged murderess. She passed on the upset of her traumatic finish to the child. The troublesome spirit in some traditional societies, on the other hand, is frequently thought to be vexed by his improper burial. In every part of the world, though return for vengeance sake has been reported for those who died as victims of murder, persecution, torture, decapitation, injustice, and the like, retaliating by causing accidents, quarrels, attacks, sickness, or even just a good fright among the living, right? And that's what we be kind of running to, like good frights. Like, you don't know how to heal with that, you better quit it. Like, I ain't got time for your otherworldly shenanigans tonight. The well-known author Isabel Allen, 1993, pages 224 to 25, relates the chilling story of General Pratt's ghost. This goes back to the 1970s. Pratt, Child's leading general, had refused to participate in the CIA-inspired coup, ousting the Social Democrat president Salvador Allende, who incidentally was assassinated on September 11th, 1973. It was a Tuesday. The leading families then fled to Argentina, but as Isabel recounts, on September 29th, 1974, which is a little over a year later, a bomb exploded in Pratt's automobile after dining with my parents. The force of the explosion dismembered the general, and his wife died in the blazing inferno. Isabel goes on to relate what happened next. A few days later in Santiago, in the residence of the commander-in-chief where Pratt and his family had lived, Pinochet's wife saw General Pratt in broad daylight sitting at the dining room table. After her first shock, she thought that the vision was the result of a bad conscience. But in the following weeks, the ghost of the betrayed friend returned many times. It appeared standing in the salons. It walked loudly down the stairway. Remember I told y'all yesterday about what happened? And that who I thought was my husband was walking loudly up my stairs and walking loudly in the room. Then I realized it wasn't my husband because my husband came walking in the room a few minutes later. I'm like, babe, somebody's in the closet, right? And so now that I'm reading this over again, I'm like, who, and I even said, I'm like, why is he stomping through here? Sound like he was stomping, like heavy, just walking. Because he never walks that loud. I'm like, he must really be mad, right? I ain't got time for other worldly shenanigans. But hold on. Let me go back here. Hold on. Let me start this whole sentence over again. Walked loudly down the stair. I want to underline that. Listen. A few days later in Santiago, in the residence of the commander-in-chief where Prats and his family had lived, Pinochet's wife saw General Prats in broad daylight sitting at the dining room table. After her first shock, she thought that the vision was a result of bad conscience, but in the following weeks, the ghost of the betrayed friend returned many times. It appeared standing in the salons, walking loudly down the stairway. It peered through doorways until its obstinate presence became intolerable. Pennant had the walls of his bewitched house reinforced and the windows covered with armor plate. He doubled his armed guard, installed machine guns around the perimeter. Like, how you gonna shoot a spirit? Pinochet had the walls of his bewitched house reinforced and the windows covered with armor plate. He doubled his armed guard, installed machine guns around the perimeter, and blocked off the streets so no one could approach. I don't know how General Prats managed to filter through such fortifications. Back to North America, Dr. Fior, 1987, page 72, found an entity hiding in her client, Barbara, which had entered her at hospital when Barbara was operated on. The intruder, Dorothy X, had herself died of cancer, after which Barbara married Dorothy X's widower. This infuriated Dorothy X, who was now determined to make her rival sick. She was obsessing her to overeat. Dorothy X's excessive attachment to her husband kept her earthbound and determined to create turmoil between the two. She was delighted that their marriage was indeed crumbling. Although a grievance or an obsession with money may keep a spirit earthbound, such scenarios are not entirely typical. Rather, the outer darkness is filled with stupefied souls, some bewildered by a violent or sudden death. Okay, I think after I finish this, I gotta pause. Rather, the outer darkness is filled with stupefied souls, some bewildered by a violent or sudden death. The dead who are not at rest are not so much evil as confused. Betty, 2012, page 27. Confusion, says Fior, 1987, page 32, was common among people who experienced a sudden, unexpected death. Some stayed where they died for hours, months, in some cases even years. The multiple, Billy Milligan, called it the dying place, where souls remain suspended between heaven and earth. He explained, I see bad things happening to people. They fall in front of cars, they fall down cliffs, they're drowning. Keyes, 1981, page 178 and 419. Vastly underrated, if not largely ignored, is the causal link between sudden death and the persistent phantom. Today, more than 150 years since the end of the Civil War, casualties of that bloody conflict still linger in spectral form above the place of their demise. A mass of orbs of all sizes was recently caught on film at a church where Civil War wounded and dying were treated. At the Antietam National Battlefield and Cemetery, which honors the 23,000 men who lost their lives on that fateful day, September 17, 1862, untraceable shouts and screams can still be heard. Paranormal researchers have been drawn to this haunted battlefield where phenomena are most evident around Burnside's Bridge. Here, spectral blue balls of light like soap bubbles, are occasionally seen floating in the air, sometimes unseen by the naked eye, but picked up by camera. Ghost hunters know the place to look for perfectly round, transparent balls are murder sites, scenes of violent death, places of suicide. Theories? Maybe it is the deceased attempting to put itself back together. Ramsland, 2001, page 205 and 296. Let me read after. What is this? I'm going to read to after this little next blurb. Okay. Still Battling is a subtitle in bold on page 31. Dying in the heat of passion, fear, and anger, they become wild and bound on battlefields, or perhaps stroll away into deserted houses and castles and are lost, bewildered, and unapproachable. Of these, there are hundreds of millions, and they are in all countries among all peoples in the world. Those slain on earthly battlefields are born into spirit and chaos, not knowing they are dead as to the earth, and so they linger on the battlefields, still battling imaginary foes, end quote. And that's found in Oahspe, Book of Judgment, chapter 32, verses 9 through 10, and also Book of Thor, chapter 1, verse 15. A ghostly reenactment of the classic Battle of Edge Hill was seen by thousands of witnesses among the Northamptonshire peasantry clergy and 2 officials of the king, only 2 months after its actual occurrence. Ebon, 1971, page 48. The clairvoyant who visits the scene of battle may encounter swirling groups of combatants who had left the body locked together in an intense emotional stress, fancying they were still engaged in slaughter, fighting in their astral bodies. Clark, 2004, page 184. In a 3rd century Greek case reported by Flavius Philostratus, a 16-year-old boy who was possessed no longer even has his own voice, as the distressed mother explained. He utters deep and grave sounds like a grown man. The eyes are not his eyes. At last, the demon revealed himself through the boy's mouth and declared to the mother that he was the spirit of a man killed in war. Ostrich, 1935, page 10. In the Pacific Islands, Mauli, Mauli, are the ghosts and evil spirits that inhabit old ceremonial ruins like the Marae, Marae, where human beings were once sacrificed, offered up to the gods or the sun or Venus. Islanders avoid these places like the plague. In the Society Islands, it was supposed that when people died violently, their spirits did not move on in the normal way, but they remained at the place of death. Hence were they dreaded, under the belief that such places, especially the Marae and the former battlefields, were haunted. Henry, 1928, page 200. Neither were Samoans who had died a violent death, especially in battle, able to start on the journey to the next world. Fear was felt by the survivors, lest such spirits should haunt their former abode. Trouble might also arise from a relative who had drowned, remaining a wanderer in limbo, lacking entrance to the country of the dead. Williamson, 1933, Volume 1, Chapter 13. Quote, phantoms, countless men and women after death wandering, end quote. Walt Whitman. In the Marquesan Islands, too, anyone who died by enemy action or in some other untimely way inhabited the place of death and was particularly annoying, as they inflicted such ills on their earthly victims as boils, skin diseases, and temporary insanity. Suggs, 1962, page 42. Investigators in all parts of the world have concluded that ghosts and poltergeists owe their existence to earthbound spirits, EBs whose lives were cut short by accidents, illness, murder, or suicide. As we go on, we will find the suddenly or violently dead to comprise the bulk of our perturbed and disturbed EBs. So what we call demons, demonic activity, stems from spirits who were once human here, who have died violently in chaos, murder, suicide, suddenly dead by any means, car accidents, illnesses. It's them. And they could be hundreds of years old past their point of death, right? Still lingering, right? Quote, many reports that have come through mediums are accounts from those who had died suddenly, end quote. John G. Fuller, The Ghost of 29 Megacycles. In one of Horatio Eddy's Dark Circles, Alcott, 1972, page 205 to 206, see below. Oh, I think it's going to get into it. See below, two discarnates made their appearance. One was a sailor spirit drowned in the wreck of the steamship President. The other was a maiden who died of a fever while captive among the Indians of Maine, circa 1770. They were traumatic, untimely deaths, yet we cannot overlook the fact that even those who have made a smoother transition may be oblivious to their passing. It does not enter their minds that they are spirits, and they are loath to recognize the fact. Wickland, 1974, page 43. Similarly, spirit mentors have explained that death is so simple and natural a process that many people do not realize the change and may be attracted by the auras of the living, causing mischief and misery. In fact, knowledge is an armor, right? And I find that to be true. Because as I'm learning more and more about what's really happening spiritually and enlighten me, I'm not so afraid. I mean, I still got a little spookiness going on. I'm just like, I wasn't prepared for that. Quit playing, right? But now I know what it is, and I'm like, oh my God, it's some, this crazy looking whatever, knowledge is definitely an armor, right? And it helps to take the fear away if you actually know what's going on. And that's in any case. In fact, knowledge is an armor. Archer, 1967, page 109. Quote, and there were born from the earth millions and millions of spirits who could not believe they were dead, but maintained they were confined in dark dungeons, coffins, howling and cursing day and night. Others were in chaos, still lingering in the places where they were cut off from the earth. End quote. Oahspe, Book of Fragapati, chapter 2, verse 11, and chapter 35, verse 5. I think, you know what? Oh, no, I can't. Hold on. Let me see something. I'm gonna just have to end this. Hold on. I just wanted to see something real quick. See how much time I had. Okay, I ain't gonna be able to finish this. Okay, let me finish this last paragraph and we're gonna have to pause. This page right here. As a busy medium, England's Ena Twigg had often to deal with those entities who have lost their physical bodies but continue to haunt this life. These poor unfortunates do not know they are dead. In one instance, Twigg was taken to a haunted theater where a man had died right in his seat, yet his spirit remained. He did not know he was dead. He'd frightened the life out of the whole staff. So my job then was to explain to him that the show was finished and he'd just as well get on with his new life. Twigg and Broad, 1973, page 107 through 109. I'm not dead, I'm not. A spirit voice came through hypnosis, Fiora, 1987, page 32. Believing only in matter, the physical life, one thinks that Earth is the only place for growth and experience. I was not aware of this side, one ex-carnate communicated. I didn't know the potential over here. So when I got here, it was like not knowing where I was at, like having a bad dream. Fuller, 1986, page 134. The confusion is vast. There were 1,800,000 spirits wandering about, mostly on the earth, and many of them had forgotten who they were, emphasis added on who they were, and had no memory of once having lived mortal lives. Oahspe, Book of Fragapati, chapter 37, verse 3, referring to a time some 7,000 years ago, yet not much has changed. A man named Peter was of Cam West's various altars, MPD. Remember, MPD is multiple personality disorder. Cam's wife asked Per, "Who are you?" Per replied through Cam, "I don't know exactly. It's strange being out here. I don't know where I came from." West, 1999, page 91. In another multiple case, several lost souls hovered around the woman, yet were unaware of her and of each other. Chase, 1987, page 74. We learn, moreover, that spirits sometimes merge unintentionally, accidentally with the host and are unable to extricate themselves. As such, Soldier X was trapped in limbo between worlds. Encountered at a rescue circle, he was identified as a Revolutionary War soldier who had been tortured by the British in that very room where the circle was held. The soldier's ordeal had unhinged his mind, and he did not realize he was dead. This is interesting because I was reading something. I remember reading over this, but I mentioned something yesterday where it started talking about the spirit being connected to the flesh, and at death it is released, and all the lights from your spine, right? People talk about this. We'll have to talk about it. We'll bring it up another time. I don't have time to explain it. But it said that the spirit was literally unhooked from the body, and the spirit is hooked in via the spine, right? The lights, the main organs, which would make sense, right? So once you die, the spirit leaves the body, it's unhooked from the flesh. The flesh goes dead. There's no life there, no kind of intelligence whatsoever. It literally unhooks itself and comes out the top of the head, right? And there are even some experiments done with people who died, like you can Google it, you can look it up. Multiple medical reports or scientific researches have been done. They weighed patients before they died, and after death, all of the bodies were, if I remember correctly, 3 ounces or 8 ounces. 3 ounces or 8 ounces lighter. So they was trying to determine like the weight of the spirit and if something is actually in the body, what happens. But every single one they tested that they weighed, the body was always like 3 to 8 ounces. It's like some exact number. It's either 3 or 8, if I remember. 3 or 8 ounces lighter after the spirit literally, it's like the spirit is like confirmed dead. There is like no more life. They wed, right? But yeah, this just reminded me of what I was reading when I was talking about the chakras and the purpose of it. People get thrown off by the word chakra and all that stuff. Like a young lady reshared the post where I showed y'all the chart yesterday where I was showing you the times of the sun and the most spiritual activity. She ain't see nothing else but a little snake and stuff, which was referring to the spine. You know, she was like, I come out of the new age and all this, sis. You getting on the wrong road. Just kind of summing it up. I'm like, you don't really listen to my videos, do you? You just saw the picture of this and you posted it, shared it, right? Well, I hope people click on my name and actually come to the video and watch it, right? But the whole point is people, even in new age movements and stuff, they got wrong. They have a lot of wrong teachers teaching them about a truth, and they're perceiving it to be something else, and they're teaching them it's evil, right? And that's how Christianity is teaching. I'm like, y'all, everybody has these energies in their bodies, and this is truly how the spirit is connected and locked into your flesh, right? I like to handle. My friend calls our body our earth suit, right? So that was interesting. But let me finish this right here, and then we're gonna pause right here at this one. And I think let me see, right here. We're gonna pause on page 35 after I finish this section right here. As such, Soldier X was trapped in a limbo between worlds. Encountered at a rescue circle, he was identified as a Revolutionary War soldier who had been tortured by the British in that very room where the circle was held. The soldier's ordeal had unhinged his mind, and he did not realize he was dead. He spoke through the medium in a broken, incoherent voice, pouring out a pitiful story of horror and confusion. Finally, the ghost accepted he was dead and agreed to leave the place. Spratt, 1967, page 164. Another spirit speaking through Mrs. Wickland admitted, I could not get out of the host's aura. Wickland, 1974, page 57. One wag, commenting on this stuckness, quipped that the devils themselves would gladly leave, but they cannot. Christianity, 1961, page 6. This is true. Many spirits are unable to go away from the mortals to whom they are bound and on whom they live. Oahspe, Book of Fragapati, chapter 35, verse 7. And in some of these instances, when spirits merge with a person by mistake, right? So this person had opened up themselves some kind of way to where this entity that was floating around, they got merged together by accident. Like the spirit was not intentionally trying to merge with its current host. But in such cases, the spirit may want to get out so bad where it will sometimes drive its current host to major extremes so it can release itself from the body via suicide. Or they call things to happen where the person would die, because that's the only way. If there is not a trained person to understand what's going on and help these people get released of these certain spirits, if that doesn't happen, they would drive this person to end themselves so that they can be released. But upon their release, the native spirit will also be released as well. And there you have another spirit born into chaos, right? And it's just a vicious cycle, which is why you have exorcisms and things like that, different. And this is going to talk about some of this electroshock therapy, because they know that there's something there. They ain't trying to shock you back to your senses. They trying to shock you to cause discomfort to your body, to try to force that spirit that's overshadowing you out of you, right? Let's get into some good stuff, y'all. And y'all can check into this. Okay, we almost done, like 1 minute. But ghosts and poltergeists seem to have a life of their own, to somehow drift into almost physical existence. Exactly how this is done has excited the curiosity of many investigators. It is wondered, Epps Sargent, 1876, page 36, with the aid of some occult alchemy unexplained to material senses. Perhaps, he thought, spirits have the power to extract elements from their surroundings wherewith they are enabled to present themselves in an exact resemblance to the earth body, together with its clothing and peculiarities. And it has an asterisk after clothing. Down at the bottom it says, as in Oahspe has it, spirits learn how to sargus, or make manifest clothing, and how to create light and darkness in the college of creation, according to the 50th deviant law. Blavatsky also, that's a separate one. Okay. Before Henry Steele Olcott started the Theosophy movement with MME. Before Henry Steele Olcott jump-started the Theosophy movement with MME, Helena Blavatsky, he had earned a fine reputation as a government investigator. And this is the second reference, this little T, right? And it says, Blavatsky also traveled up the eddies where the spirits spoke to her in Russian. Before Henry Steele Olcott jump-started the Theosophy movement with MME, Helena Blavatsky had earned a fine reputation as a government investigator. Then, after eyewitnessing the materializations at the Eddy household in Vermont, he asked how those spirit forms, which he saw with his own eyes, could be explained. We can conceive of the body being made by a supreme effort of the spirits from the invisible atoms of the atmosphere. On one occasion, 10 spirits appeared to us, among them a lady who had died the Friday previous. Her relative sat beside me and was dreadfully agitated at the thought that one whom she had seen buried only a few days before, emphasis added, should so soon have burst the crements of the grave. Poor woman. Alcott, 1972, page 309, and pages 326 to 327. Right here, we're going to pause after this verse. Quote, I have given power to spirits of the newly dead, emphasis added on newly dead, to clothe themselves from the atmosphere with corporeal semblances of flesh and blood. When thou hast quit the corporal body, behold, thy spirit will be free. Thou shalt fashion from the surroundings thine own form, hands, arms, and feet and legs perfectly. End quote. Oahspe, Book of Apollo, chapter 10, verse 12, and Book of Ben, chapter 4, verse 10 through 11, which this says right here, when they ask the spirits, how in the world, how are you able to manifest yourself, right? Listen. Then after eyewitnessing the materializations at the Eddy household in Vermont, he asked how those spirit forms, which he saw with his own eyes, could be explained. We conceive, quote, we conceive of the body being made by a supreme effort of the spirits from the invisible atoms of the atmosphere, end quote, right? And so this is where we'll pause at today. And I think when I come back, I'm going to come back and I'm going to start right here with this, probably at the end of this page, but ghosts and poltergeists seem to have a life of their own. And take this to the end. And we'll be we won't be here tomorrow, but it's like, it's 2 pages, a little over, well, actually not 2 pages, almost 2 pages left, right? And then we start the chapter Flight of the Soul, which is really, really good. Me is short for Madam. Oh, thank you. Lord, I didn't know that. I never use the abbreviation for madam. I just say madam. Thank you, MME. Madam, you know, because I was wondering. That's why I messed up the sentence the first time. Yes. Give me a second. That's why I messed up the sentence when I saw the period after MME, like Mr. or Mrs. It's abbreviated. I never knew that was an abbreviation for madam. Madam Helena Blavatsky. Okay, thank you. Pause that, Tootie. All right, y'all. So let me put my page number down here. All right, so tomorrow we are observing Sabbath, so we will not be here. But you can read ahead. Feel free to go ahead, right? That way, look, when y'all come back, if y'all read ahead, I don't know, ask some questions. I might be to figure some stuff out. And then again, I might not, so we can talk about it together. I don't know, right? Or just save it to the weekend, because we got Saturday and Sunday, we got a whole bunch of time on the weekend, so just, we'll see. Okay. Yes, Tootie? Yes, I'm about to end it. Hold on, write my page number, girl. Hey. Okay, I'm gonna put back here. Pick back up.
Tell me what's this on.
Page, I'm put 34.
And tell me what is this. I'm good at this game.
Yeah.
I don't see this.
Okay. Let me get my little, I'll use this one. Okay. Won't put it here. It'll be easier. All right, y'all. I'm just make sure I remember my exact point when I'm coming back, because we didn't finish the chapter. Okay. All right, y'all. So it is Wednesday, November the 2nd, 2022, day 253 of year 4. We're reading through the books of the Law and the Prophets under the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1,272. We read in the Oahspe, page 19, the Roman numerals, page 19, and went all the way in to the regular numbers 1, 2, and 3, and we stopped on page 3. And we finished another little portion of the first chapter from pages 22 to page 35 in the Field Guide to the Spirit World, The Science of Angel Power, Discarnate Entities, and Demonic Possession by Susan B. Martinez. All right, beautiful people. That is it for today. Father, we thank you that you are forever forgiven. And that's going to be it, y'all. I'll see y'all back here Friday morning, 6:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Here in a few minutes, not a few minutes, but shortly, I'm going to post that link. Tootie, turn it down some. I'm going to post the link to what Elizabeth was showing me from New Mexico State University and the whole little exhibit. That's what's called the exhibit of Shalom and Oahspe. Everything that they have is literally a whole page full of that stuff, references. And if you click on, and I'll point to it when I post it. If you click on it, it opens up this huge PDF full of references and all that great stuff about Shalom, looking into different things like everything. Good, bad. I'm like, this is a gold mine, right? So, all right, y'all, that is it. I love y'all. And I will see y'all back here Friday morning, bright and early, 6:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace.